What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Unmasking Greatness. I'm your host, Chris Kokoris, and I have a very good friend and owner of Clean Eats in Greenville, Karley Jones.
Hello.
This episode I've been looking forward to. I met Karley through obviously mutual businesses in the local upstate area, and always trying to network, but I have to take my hat off to Karley because Karley is like a networking master.
I don't know about that, but I yap a lot.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, I look up to you, especially in that standpoint. I talk to a lot of different businesses because I'm just like, you got to go out there, you got to talk to people, you got to network, and you are at every single like health, fitness event that I can kind of think of, and it's impressive.
Thank you.
I will say that.
It. Your girl's tired, but
Yeah.
we're getting it done. Yeah.
But you're here. We're here.
We're here. Yeah.
So cool. So I'm glad to have you on. I really kind of want to dig into you, how you got into, Clean Eats, your past, because I'm assuming, and I kind of did some research too, everybody has like an unhealthy past
That's right.
to some capacity.
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah. So I really want to kind of dig into that, a little bit about Clean Eats, and then also, I want to try to give some value to the listeners, especially if they're trying to get into a healthier lifestyle. What are some like small implementations that they could get into as far as getting them a little bit closer to their goals? So again, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, so let's start with this. Let's start with, actually, I think a day or two ago I saw stories on your Instagram feed of pictures of you in the past holding drinks and little comments of how did I actually look like this before. So yeah, let's start there. Let's bring those pictures up and
I used to be a self-proclaimed trash bag, if you will. Just I didn't come from a healthy lifestyle, so that's never been on my radar, right? I am a hard worker though, so I've always been a hard worker, and I've been in the restaurant industry for a very long time, and I have that background in common.
Yeah.
But the restaurant industry is great for partying, So my late teens and early 20s, that's just what I did. You would get off work and you would meet up with people and you would pregame to go out and drink, and then you would drink all night, and then, I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, and I smoked for 9 years, and then I was drinking in excess multiple nights a week, if not every night out of the week. It was a problem. And then I was eating fast food super late at night, because that's what you do when you go out and drink every night.
Right.
And then I was also working in the restaurant industry, and I was working really hard. Like I said, I've always been a hard worker. I wanted to, progress in my career, but I would grab a Chick-fil-A biscuit on the way to work, and then I would eat lunch at the restaurant, and then I would eat McDonald's at 2 a.m. after I got done drinking all night. So like there was no health and fitness and nutrition anywhere in my mind. But I moved down to Anderson. I got a general manager position at the restaurant franchise that I was in at 21. And so I was the youngest GM in the company, and I was really proud of that. I moved down there, and again, I was working like 70 hours a week though, because that restaurant was failing. It wasn't doing well. Honestly, I think they gave it to me because it was failing. They were like, we'll give that to her.
Let her drop the ball.
But to this day, I'm the only person that has turned a profit at that location. I'm still very proud of that. But I was working my butt off to do it. And so I was just putting on weight, because in high school, it's a little bit easier, right? Most people are playing a sport or you're being active in some way, so it can kind of like negate all of your other poor choices. Yeah. But when you're just working all the time, I put on a lot of weight. So at my heaviest, I was like 215.
Okay.
This was 2012. I was in a friend's wedding, and I remember going to pick out my dress, and I was like, I'm probably like a size 6, size 8, And they were like, girl, you're like 14. I was like, oh, all right. And then we got the pictures back from the wedding, and I always joke that my arm looks like one of those big turkey legs you would get at like a fair. You know what I'm talking about? Like those giant. I was like, what in the world?
The Renaissance fair.
Yes, yeah, like a Renaissance fair turkey leg arm. But I knew that I needed to make a change, but I had zero clue where to start, because I didn't grow up in a healthy household.
Yeah.
Like, you could eat whatever you wanted in our house. There was an endless supply of soda. There was no, you know what I mean, eat your veggies. Yeah. Like, it was just whatever. You're just doing whatever. And I mean, and I don't blame my family. Like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And we grew up in the South, so everything is cooked with butter and lard and, all the good
Fry
stuff.
Everything.
Yeah, everything's fried. And so I found a coach. Shout out to getting a coach if you don't know where to start. And it really did change my life. Like, I had no clue. And so she just taught me the basics. And so it was, you're going to eat in a calorie deficit, and you're going to move your body, and you're going to burn more calories than you're going to consume, and you're going to lose weight. And it worked.
Baseline.
So, yeah, just the basics.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because obviously you started to notice, okay, smoking, drinking, gaining weight. Was there one thing that was kind of like the tipping, like, I can't continue living like this? Or, what made you decide, okay, I got to change, I got to hire a coach? Like, did you feel like you had to get like really into like a deep depressed spot? You didn't like your life, or what was that?
There's not one specific incident that I can remember, but specifically the drinking. You know how people say, like, what's the sober thoughts or drunken words? That's just not true. Like, some people are just different humans when they're drunk, and I'm one of those people. Like, I make decisions that I wouldn't make sober, and I don't like that about myself. And I am so type A in my life. And I'm like, why am I letting myself be out of control? I don't enjoy being out of control.
Yeah.
So the drinking was something that was just had to go cold turkey, and it is significantly easier to lose weight if you are not consuming
For sure.
tons of calories through alcohol. And so that was just something that was, I don't have that addictive personality. So I fell into that drinking, but then it was really easy for me to, it's really easy for me to cut something off if I see that it's not serving me. So alcohol was something that was easy to cut off, and I still don't drink. I maybe have 5 drinks a year or something on, a special occasion. But
when you were going out and drinking, I'm assuming that you also were going out with the same kind of friends.
And I don't blame those people, because again, like, I am responsible for my own
100%.
self, right? And I try not to make excuses about that, but you do have to remove yourself from those people. And when I found out, maybe not everybody finds this out, but a lot of people just like fun drunk Karley. And I was the one who, like, nobody wants to party alone, right? And I had a good job, whereas a lot of my friends didn't. They were either in college or just graduated college and were in entry-level positions, but nobody wants to party alone. So it was, if you come out drinking with me, I'll pay for you. So most of the time, it was just people wanted to hang out with me because I'd probably pay for the alcohol.
I bet your paycheck increased significantly, not spending all that money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ironically enough, smoking was the last thing to go. And because it is such an addiction, right? I had lost some weight, and then I started doing group fitness. I love group fitness. And I used to be a dancer when I was younger, and so I got into dance fitness, and I started teaching dance fitness. And what was so funny, my now husband and I were dating at the time, and he was like, "You look ridiculous pulling up to teach your fitness class smoking a cigarette before you get out of the car. Like, come on." And I was like, I know. And so that was the last thing to go. But now I can't even stand the smell of it. And you used to smoke too, right?
Yeah, it's like your story is very, very similar to mine, because obviously, like, restaurant background. I was going out and drinking with friends as well. I did it I don't say I would do it, maybe not as much like throughout the week. It was kind of like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday kind of thing, going out with friends. It got to a point where, I was spending every week's paycheck going out, drinking and partying with friends.
Think of the money we could have right now. Think of where we could be in life.
I'm talking about my whole paycheck, And then at one point I woke up and I was just like really depressed, because when you're out, you're drinking, you're having fun, endorphins are flowing. And then you wake up to the reality of what you truly live. And it's like, I don't like this. I want to go back and drink, but you can't do that, obviously. So it kind of put me in a place where I was like, is this it? Is this what my life is going to be? I'm just going to work and drink and party and, wake up feeling even worse every single morning. So that was kind of where I started to, finally pull back and stop drinking. And I asked about the friends too, because my friends would call me, because I was going out so much. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to go. And then slowly those calls start to like stop coming in.
Yeah, I don't get invited to nothing now.
And
I don't miss it. Like,
And same thing with drinking. Very similar. I went to Greenville Tech to get a personal training certification there. And they had us, first off, I was smoking in the parking lot before I would actually walk in there. So that, I'm sure they smelled that on me.
Why do smokers think, if you smoke and you don't think that people can smell it on you?
Oh, they smell it.
100% they smell it. Like, I'm like, how did I ever think people weren't smelling this?
Yeah. I can't be around it anymore.
No, me either.
But I remember one day we had to do a 12-minute run test. So 12 minutes of running, you see as far as you can get. I think I ran a minute and a half, like before I was like.
But your lungs were like,
yeah, like what's going on? And I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed that I was like, because I had a little bit of muscle, but like, you know, from an aerobic standpoint, I was trash.
Right.
And I was like, I cannot come out here, promote health, fitness, and be smoking, you know, after each session or in between clients or something like that. So that's when I decided, I was like, okay, I got to stop. I couldn't cold turkey that one. That was one where I went from, I was doing a pack, I went down to half a pack, eventually got to like this breakfast, lunch, dinner cadence. But I'll tell you what was the real kicker. I finally went to a house party because I was still pretty young, and everybody was there, and I drank a little bit then too. And one of my friends, I intentionally didn't bring cigarettes. Because if anybody knows, if you drink,
they're hand in hand.
A pack is probably done in a night.
Yeah.
And so I didn't bring one, and my friend asked if I wanted one, and I said no. And I was like, haha, you know, I can do this.
Yes.
You know, that little win, but it was enough to like prove to myself, okay, I'm strong enough to say no, I don't need this anymore. So, and that was it. That was
you know,
it
some people say that you can't, like, you have to quit smoking for yourself, right? Nobody can make you. But again, my now husband, he and I were just started dating at the time, and he straight up said, he was like, I'm not dating a smoker. That is gross. I was like, okay, well, you're cute, and I don't want to, you know? So he's truly the reason why I, like, stopped cold turkey.
Man, that's a good person to have.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that goes back to your environment. You gotta put yourself in a different environment if you expect some sort of change. It'll increase the outcome of what you're trying to achieve significantly. So, all right, so let's go back. Okay, you're working at this management position. Where did you find your path going into Clean Eats?
So I was working, I'd moved back from Anderson back to Greenville, and I was working at multiple different locations. I was doing catering full time for them, and then doing a little bit of admin in their office. And my husband and I were engaged at the time, and so I was working like 50 or 60 hours a week. I did not have time for a part-time job, but I'm a workaholic. Like, I like working, I like making money. Yeah. And so we wanted to help pay for the wedding, so I said, well, I'll get a part-time job. And I found a Facebook ad for Clean Eats. I had never heard of it, but I feel very confident that I could do any restaurant job. And then on top of it, it had the health aspect. And I was like, well, that's cool, like, you know? So I went and checked it out, and I met with the owner at the time, and he and I just, like, instantly clicked. Like, we just had very similar faith in things and just motivations. And so I was very honest, though. I was like, I work a lot, and my schedule is not consistent. So, like, I'll be here. I just don't know when I'll be here and how often I'll be here, you know? And so he was desperate at the time because they were a new restaurant, and they were hiring anybody and everybody. He was like, you're hired. So I came on, and I was driving from Spartanburg to Clean Eats. So if you're local, you know, down 85, I would get off at like 4 or 5 in the afternoon in Spartanburg, and then try to go southbound to go to Clean Eats. It was a hot mess. So I was like, please don't put me on the schedule for a certain time. I'll just show up, you know, when I show up. Yeah. But I would get there and then just kind of close the restaurant. And I just love taking care of people. And I still to this day joke that, like, healthy people are nicer than other people. I was going to ask. And so the customers were so nice, and they genuinely were so excited for what we were and what we were doing. And like, my first night, this guy comes in and he goes, hey, I didn't get the macro matrix email this week. Okay, well, it's my first day. I have no clue what a macro matrix email is. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about that. Let me get your email, and I'll make sure to forward that to you. I had no clue what that was. And so I called Matt, the owner, the next day, and I was like, hey, can you email me the macro matrix? I need to send it over to Rodney. And he's like, do you know what that is? I said, no, but he said he didn't get it. And he was just blown away that I would, like, you know what I mean, take the time to do that for somebody. But I just love serving people and taking care of people. And then we were getting people healthy on top of it. You know, it was like genuine change in people's lives, and it was really cool. And people were coming in day after day and saying, like, oh, I've lost 20 pounds, or, oh, like, I was, you know, pre-diabetic, and now my doctor's taking me off my medication. Like, it was just really cool. And so Matt said, you're great at this. You should come on full time. But they had just opened up, and he was 25. Okay.
Oh, wow,
and so quitting my job of, you know, 10 plus years to go work for like a 25-year-old on paper does not look great, right? Like, everybody would be like, do not do that. My dad was like, do not do that. And he said, look, I'll pray about it. You pray about it. We really need somebody in here that's just going to like love it how I love it and, take over. And so I did pray about it. And I think a lot of times in our faith, we want something so badly that we can convince ourselves that God's saying that's us wanting it. But really, is it, or is it just us wanting it really badly? Mm-hmm. And so I'm driving in the car and I'm praying about it. I'm like, God, like, Moses and the burning bush. Like, I don't need a burning bush, but I just need something. Give me a clear, yes, this is the path that you want for me. Because I'm not a job hopper. And my husband and I had just gotten married, right? And we just bought a house. And so this was not something that we could just hop into a career and it fail. And I'm driving down the road. I finished that prayer, and I always listen to praise and worship music in the car because what you put in your mind is just as important as everything else. Mm-hmm. And there's this song called So Will I. It was playing, and as soon as I finished praying, that lyric said, if the wind goes where you send it, so will I. And I was like, it's not a burning bush.
Yeah.
But it's pretty dang close.
Yeah.
And so I accepted that position, and it was a risk on his end, too, because I was very honest. Like, we had just gotten married. We were trying to have a baby. Like, that, no employer wants to hear that,
Yeah.
And a month after I came on full-time, I found out I was pregnant. That is an employer's worst nightmare. Nobody wants to hear that. But, I mean, it's history. I've been there ever since. We opened in 2017. I started in August, and I started in September, and then I've been there ever since. And it truly has changed my life. It was the best decision I've ever made. I love it.
I love that story, honestly, because me and Karley actually sat down one day at your restaurant, and we were just talking business.
Yeah.
And she told me a story, and I was just like, that's so cool. I think everybody needs some sort of belief or faith in some capacity, and I don't know. For whatever reason, that has always stuck in my brain, that conversation that we had. So I'm glad that you shared that with everybody too. Man, that's wild. You hear a lot of stories like that when people are, talking, because you can get in your own head. You want something so badly, you can start to like craft things, like, look at different things and make it sound, but it's gotta touch you, and it's worked out good. And also kind of, you're clean, and correct me if I'm wrong, how many Clean Eats are there in the States?
So there are over 100 Clean Eats location open nationwide. Okay. I think we're like at 112 right now.
Now, you
insert hair flip.
The number one,
We are the number one. Greenville, South Carolina. Little old Greenville is the number one Clean Eats location.
That is so impressive.
Thank you.
Although, I'm also not surprised, because it is, coming from like a restaurant background, my family's from the restaurant, my wife's side, they all have restaurants too. Nobody is really going hard with social media, promoting, networking, like doing all the things most people don't want to do. Mm-hmm. Like, you're there, you're doing it. So I say that it's not surprising, because like I'd be surprised if a lot of the other Clean Eats are going to the extent that you're going. I think for you to achieve what you've achieved, you have to do what nobody else wants to do.
Well, I appreciate that. And because the Clean Eats organization is, it's top tier. Like, the founders are amazing, and they establish an amazing culture, and then it just trickles down from there. The owners in the organization are powerhouses. And most of them have a story similar to ours. Almost all of them started out with some type of unhealthy lifestyle, hit rock bottom, changed their lives, found Clean Eats, and then was like, I want to open a Clean Eats. We're changing lives. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And so there's so many amazing people in the organization that, like, I'm a yapper, but when I get in the room with them, I will shut up and listen all day, because it's just a wealth of knowledge when everybody gets together. And there's so many, everybody communicates so well. I just have found so many mentors and so many friends through that organization. Like, the culture starts at the top and then it just trickles down. And our store being at the top really is a God thing. Like, it truly is. We've just surrendered that business over to the Lord and said, God, like, as long as we are changing lives, just make sure that we are following your will for that, and we will be as obedient to you as we possibly can. And he has just blessed it upon blessed it. But we have a great team, and we have a great culture, and Greenville has a great health and wellness, community in general. And so we try to be non-intimidating, right? So it can be really intimidating, just like a gym. If you don't have a clue how to eat healthy, it is very intimidating to walk into somewhere and not know where to start. But we try to make it an atmosphere where everybody feels welcome.
Yeah, well, you do a really good job.
Thank
I think
you.
a lot of that as well is, I don't know if Clean Eats has, I'm sure they've given you some sort of standard or SOPs on how to be a leader and train your staff, but I think that comes down to you at the end of the day, because you are a walking example of that place and you set the standard, you know, and it's kind of like if you want to be here and you want to grow with us, you know, we all have to be up here,
right?
You know, and every
I'm
time
just not going to ask somebody to do something that like I haven't done myself or I wouldn't be willing to do, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm walking through the dining room and there's trash on the floor, I'm stopping to pick up the trash on the floor. Or if I go to the bathroom and there's piss on the toilet seat, I'm wiping off the piss on the toilet seat. Like we just, and that's just kind of how I tell all of them. Like we just do the things that need to be done and we act with integrity. That's one of our core values.
Yeah.
And so if we all hold each other to the same standard, right? So if somebody comes in and they're not meeting the standard, they kind of weed themselves out. I don't have to do a ton of firing because if you don't enjoy discipline and you don't enjoy holding yourself to a higher standard, you will not enjoy working in our environment. So they kind of...
Well, I'm sure you see, I mean, you were talking about the customers, but I can imagine the employees from your past job being GM to this one significantly different.
Yeah.
I say that to say because like, when I used to be working in the restaurant, I would probably consider myself more of like a kitchen manager. I did everything from prepping to cooking to like, you know, scheduling everybody that had to do back of house stuff. And my father's old school, you know, old school Greek. He's going to talk some shit to you. He's going to like, sometimes he'll talk down to people, you know, but he'll also play with them, you know? So it's kind of like this, just kind of depends how he's feeling that day or how well you're doing. Because if you don't do your job, he would be like thrown off. And I think that just goes back to like the old way of running restaurants and immigrants and stuff like that. But once I got in there, I was like, okay, I need to make sure that I know how to do everything, for one. But two, I'm gonna work next to everybody, you know, and I'm gonna do it with them. And that's how I ended up building such a strong team back there, because before it was like, that's not my job. I'm not doing that. Tell the dish boy to do that, or you know, I'm not prepping that. I got to clock out. That's a real quick way to get
fired. I don't fire a lot of people, but that's not my job thing. Tears my nerves up. I'm like, if it's not causing you bodily harm, it's your job in here. Okay, we're all doing it.
I know. I'm telling you, and so that was. But once I started doing that, especially like busy times, like we were cranking, and it was fun because it was like exciting for us. I know it's really crazy. But
no, I love the chaos. There's nothing like just hearing the ticket printer keep going and everybody's just moving and grooving.
It's just like rolling, about to hit the floor.
Yes, it's a good time.
But when everybody's in sync and everybody's moving, it's flowing. You know, everything's flowing. And I built a super solid team back there. And kind of like you said, you know, we didn't get the best of the best back there. I mean, a lot of them were like ex-convicts, you know, dropouts, whatever it may be. And, you know, some of them, they just needed a second chance. But some of them came in and they still had old habits. And at one time, I almost got in a fight with a guy. I mean, it almost got that physical, and everybody around me dragged that guy out for me. You know, they're
because
like,
they respect you. Because they know you do the same for them.
And they told him like, yo, you got to go. So I didn't even have to fire him or nothing. He just never came back, you know. And I think that's, you know, from a leader's perspective, you know, I respect that a lot from you, because I can see that. Like, you are doing everything, and I'm sure that's, you know, sure you have your standards, but people are watching you, and, you know, it reflects.
It takes more. It definitely takes more effort. And I think I've softened as I've gotten older. So like 25-year-old manager Karley, and I use this example a lot. I had a guy that came in for a shift. It's a Friday night. He's my head cook, and he had on white Air Force Ones. Okay, that's not uniform. It's black non-slip shoes, my guy. You know, and there was no. I said, "Do you have black non-slip shoes?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, then you can't work your shift." And he said, "Who's going to cook?" I said, "I guess I am, you know." And he left, and I cooked that shift. But now, 10 years later, you know, I would say to somebody, why don't you have? And that has stuck with me. Why don't you have your shoes? And because now I think, like, did he get kicked out of his house? He's a teenager. Did he get kicked out of his house the night before? Can he not afford to get black non-slip shoes? Has he been wearing the same ratty pair for 5 years and can't afford to replace it? Whatever it is, you know what I mean? Yeah. Now I'm just that person that I'm going to give people grace and ask them and kind of meet them where they are. So the standard doesn't change. The standard is still the black non-slip shoe, but let me help you get to the black non-slip shoe. Yeah. That's a metaphor, for life, not just black non-slip shoes. But
no, that's a really good perspective. Yeah, sometimes you just don't know. Maybe they don't have $1 to their name and they just started. They can't even afford it. So maybe you got to spot them.
Yeah.
I don't know. It might be your best employee.
That's right. You never know.
Yeah. So.
And that's the thing. I love our customers. We're changing the lives of our customers, but it's the staff for me. I have such a great team. And I've gotten to see how working at Clean Eats has changed their lives, whether it's because it affords them a really nice schedule so they can go out and chase another career. Yeah. Almost everybody that works for me is not a restaurant person. They are, I hire personalities, right? I'm not hiring positions, I'm hiring people. And so when they come in, they've got other things going on in their lives that they're trying to achieve and get to. And I just get to help support them along their way because there's skills that you can gain from any job, right? It doesn't matter what you do. Those skills can translate over. And if you don't think that, then it's not for you.
Yeah. No, I love that. So let me ask you this. If a customer comes in there for the first time and more than likely, they're probably wanting to lose some weight. I mean, they want to eat healthy. I'm assuming that's probably the majority of them. If somebody comes in and they ask you guys, hey, what's good? What should I get? Do you suggest certain things or certain items? What's kind of the go-to response to somebody like that?
I always tell our staff that we're not selling meals, we're solving problems. So I don't want to just sell somebody a meal. You can buy a meal anywhere, right? Yeah. And so there are a lot of people that come in and they go, I want to lose weight.
Yeah.
Don't we all? So we start with a lot of questions. And of course, you kind of read the room. Some people are more open than others, but what's our goals? What are we currently eating? What do we like? What do we not like? Let's figure out what our baseline is before. But we have things on the menu that I call less intimidating items, right? So again, I think when people think meal prep, they're thinking, now I have to eat chicken, rice, and broccoli for every single meal. And when they come in and they look at our cafe menu and you see a bacon chicken ranch flatbread with a side of sweet potato fries, you're like, I can eat that. I don't mind eating that. Or if you go over to the Grab and Goes to pick out a meal and you see buffalo chicken mac and cheese, you're like, okay, I would enjoy that, Now it's next to the chicken, rice, and broccoli. We got that too, But it's about balance. We want you to have options.
Yeah, mac and cheese sounds a lot better, I'm sure, to a lot of people. Yeah. I mean, I will say, that is one thing, we talked about that too as well, is that I think for most people that are starting and trying to get healthy, is portion control. When you go out to a, everyday restaurant, there's probably 2 to 3 servings on one plate. Yes. And if you come from, I don't want to tell my age, but if you come from you're a little bit older, your parents taught you to finish everything on your plate.
Right.
They're starving people.
There's starving kids in other countries. Yes,
so,
eat your food.
You kind of learn these habits, which, I understand that, but the portion size have grown over the decades.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the times it's really just controlling that. I mean, we tell our clients too, if you go out to eat, a lot of times just when your food's coming out, ask for a to-go box and take half with you.
That's such a good hack. And we want it to be a tool, right? It's the same thing as if you get a personal trainer. If you have to have a personal trainer for 10 years, you probably should look at a different personal trainer, right? This should be a lifelong thing. And for a lot of people, meal prep is a season of life, right? And so it could be just starting out. I don't know how to cook and with the proper portions. And you can buy a food scale on Amazon, but that's incredibly intimidating for somebody that has no clue where to begin, right? So if we can do all of that for them. But I tell people, if you come in and you're eating our boneless wings and a side of mac and cheese for lunch every day from our Grab and Go, then when you go out to the restaurant and you're having a couple of beers and you're watching the game and you order boneless wings and a side of mac and cheese, you now know in your head what a 4-ounce portion of this looks like, or what about 30 grams of protein of chicken is going to look like, instead of just eating the entire thing, And you might still eat the entire thing, but at least you can kind of maybe track the calories in your head a little better,
That's funny. But, I will say, because you have in dining, but you also obviously can get meal prep. And I really don't want to say this because I felt like it was my own little hack, but when the hurricane came through, grocery stores were empty. It was hard to get food because people are stocking up.
Yeah.
And I remember contacting you, and you're like, we're stocked up to the to the brim.
Yes.
I was like, I'm gonna be there in a minute. And
Yeah.
I'd grab food for the whole week, you know.
We learned that through COVID. So what was so sad was seeing so many businesses shut their doors during COVID because people weren't going out to eat, right?
Yeah.
But we had our best year. I mean, we exploded during COVID because people, shocker, found out they should probably start eating a little better, taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
And then they couldn't go to the grocery store because the grocery store was out of everything. So, I mean, people were in nonstop. So many people discovered us during COVID because they couldn't go out. And so they were just ordering meals or coming and grabbing meals and going.
Yeah, that's a crazy opportunity. Yeah, I mean, because it made my life super easy. I mean, a lot of people, if your focus is trying to get time back, you don't want to be thinking about what you have to eat for lunch or where you're going to go. You know, I was going, there's a restaurant down the street. I was going to go get something for lunch one day. And in my mind, first off, the line was wrapped around the whole building. There's people like lined up inside. I'm like, if you had an hour break, I'd be stressing.
Yes.
You know, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm not even gonna have time to eat this thing by the time I get, back to the office or wherever they gotta go. So eliminating a lot of that can free up your time and, obviously have you a lot less stressed throughout the day. So.
On top of our grab and goes, you can obviously eat those for lunch. I stress my line cooks out because I write the ticket time on every single ticket that they send out because I'm like, these people got to get back to work, okay?
Yeah.
We need to get this food out in less than 10 minutes because they have 30 minutes to an hour. Like, let's go. But it stresses them out, but the customers love it.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to switch gears just a little bit because, I want to go back to the fact, because again, we're very like workaholics. We love to work. We love our jobs. I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
But you also have a family. You're married. You have a daughter, correct?
Two. Yep. She's 6.
And 6 years old.
Yeah, because our kids are same age, right?
Mine just turned 7.
Yeah.
So how do you juggle all of that, right? Like managing employees, a business, making sure that you're there and present with your family, going to church, like doing all of that. How do you find a way that crafts that integrates? Because I don't think that in my personal opinion, balance is very hard. So things have to integrate with each other.
Right.
So how do you do it?
So, work-life balance is such a buzzword, right? Like everybody talks about work-life balance. And I used to think that like I had to be, balanced. Yeah. And I still do have a balance, but what I've realized is it's not every day balanced. It might be work and then home, and then work and then home, and then 3 works real hard, and then 2 home, Yeah. So like at the end of the year, were we balanced? Yeah. Not on like a day-to-day were we balanced. But I truly do have the best job. Like I love, if you're going to work in the restaurant industry, Clean Eats is the restaurant to work at. We close at 7 during the week.
That's nice.
And we're only open 12 to 4 on the weekends. And so it allows people to have a life outside of their job, right? Because we're working to live, not living to work. And so I do get to be home in the evenings with my daughter, and we do, bath time and bedtime and schoolwork and playtime and all of that stuff. And then I'm home on the weekends with her. Again, it comes down to like having a really strong team that I have been very intentional in creating so that when I'm not there, it's still running as if I was there because they take a lot of pride in it. So it's intentional and it's hard work and it is sometimes exhausting, right? Like I cannot remember what podcast I was listening to, but he was talking about some people are going to get this and some people don't, how everything needs to be time blocked, and that can feel very disingenuous to say time with husband, you know what I mean? Yeah. But for somebody that's busy and is trying to be intentional with their time, it is important to schedule in that time to go on a weekend trip with your significant other kid-free, or to take my daughter and do something just her, or make sure that I'm still volunteering at church and keeping the nursery on Sunday, or whatever it is, It's just everything is time blocked, and that can feel really, again, disingenuous and kind of exhausting to some people, but for me, it's the only way to make sure that it's getting done and getting it in.
I think if there's business owners listening, they'll really grasp that concept because as we have these businesses, our minds never turn off.
No.
Right? You're constantly like thinking of ideas and concepts and things that you have to do, employees, whatever.
You saw the notes app in my phone. It is just, you know what I mean? Like it's just like random to-do lists that are just continuing or shopping lists or business ideas. Like that's all it is, right?
Yeah.
The next thing.
Yeah, I mean, I live my life on schedule. Time block everything. I time block time with my family.
Yeah.
But that tells me, it gives me the signal like, okay, Chris, turn off the day. Like you're done for the day. You'll pick it up because I think a lot of us in the beginning were like, I gotta catch up. I gotta catch up. You are never catching up.
No,
because
you're never caught up.
Yeah,
if you're
it will
living your
never
life
end.
trying to catch up, like you're gonna burn out really quickly.
Yeah, but I like what you said as far as like the balance because I think, big picture, like there's going to be times that there's some imbalance where you are working a lot to know down the road that you're going to have more family that's at the priority list or whatever you have going on. You're crafting a life that you want, but sometimes it takes working 10, 12, 14 hours a day sometimes. I've been there, and sometimes again, if you really enjoy what you like, it can be hard, but you got to set some boundaries. Like I think you probably heard me say this too, as far as like people think of time blocking or boundaries as restrictive, right? Like, oh, I don't want people to tell me what to do. I don't want to restrict myself. But I always use the example of, having a dog and a fence. What is the purpose of having a fence? It's not to be mean or cruel to a dog. It's to, one, give it exercise. It can run, it can play, but it protects them from running in the street, getting hit by a car, or something coming in and attacking it. Those boundaries are set in place for a bigger reason. And I think if people start to grasp that concept for their life, they're going to see that they have more time for their family. They're going to be more productive at work. They're going to have time for the gym, and take care of their health. When you start to put things in places, it just makes everyday life easier. Doesn't mean it always goes perfectly, right? But at least you have a standard of the way that things are going, and you can audit, you can change it. Things always change in life. We talk about seasons.
So true. Especially when people say, "I don't have time." I'm like, "Do you? Do you not have time?"
Yeah.
Because, like, we're all busy, right? Like we just are. Yeah. But I get up really early. I get up at 4:30, and like that's not everybody's cup of tea. And I'm not like advocating for that. I also go to bed really early. I just function better in the morning. So I get up really early at 4:30, but then I'm in bed and like asleep by like 9:30 at the very latest. And but like from 4:30, we hit the ground running in the morning, and we're going until the end of the day.
Yeah. I want to bring up something. So if you're okay with it. So if a lot of people, if you've listened to the podcast, obviously know my father had cancer, and we've talked a lot because I know your mother's going through it right now. How do you help someone that's listening that maybe it's not cancer, maybe it's something else that's dramatic in their life? How do you still push forward through the day with something that's very heavy and also time consuming? Because I was driving my parents up to Duke University every 3 weeks. That's a 2-day venture, sometimes 3.
Yeah.
Same with you. Like, how do you keep your head strong and focused and still be there for them?
So, I said that I didn't come from a healthy family. And so my mindset now is I didn't come from a healthy family, so I need to make sure that a healthy family comes from me. So I think a lot about my mom, but then I also think a lot about my daughter. And they're very close. So my mom, and when I tell people about her, I think your mind goes to her being much older because she fell at home. She broke her femur, and they did a CT scan. They found the mass in her colon and on her liver through that CT scan. Wow. So they're like, hey, not only you broke your femur, surprise, you also have stage 4 colon cancer. But so that sounds like an elderly person. My mom is 55.
Oh, geez.
She is so young, and I'm an only child. And my mom is type 1 diabetic, and so she has struggled with complications through that my entire life. And so she just is not a healthy person. And so I think my brain has always maybe mentally prepared myself for what I am doing now, right? Because I take her to all of her doctor's visits, and I take her to chemo and that kind of thing because she needs me and she needs that support. And I don't blame her at all. But like when I'm rucking around the neighborhood with a 20-pound weighted vest on looking like a crazy person, I'm like, but I'm not going to have osteoporosis at 55 years old. Like your mindset just changes to where, like we talked about this before, like there's just some things you just have to get it done. People are like, how are you doing? And I'm like, I mean, we're just doing it. You just have to get stuff done, right?
Yeah.
And we can sit around and feel sorry for ourselves. And don't get me wrong, I have. We all have those moments of grief. But like, life goes on, And the more you can control, and you send me that text message, so I have to give him credit because so many people will, and everybody means well, they always send thoughts and prayers, and don't get me wrong, I will take all the thoughts and all the prayers that anybody wants to give me, and I'm so grateful for all of those messages. But your message to me was so, just, you could tell you understood exactly what I was going through because you yourself had been through it. So to, give that little encouragement of, hey, I know where you're at. Let's control what we can control. You gave me, tangible things to do to, actually help. You know what I mean? And I appreciated that so much because, that was already what I was mulling over in my head every day. Okay, you got to do this. You can control what you can control. You can only do so much. Let's just get it done. Yeah. And so, to anybody else that's struggling with anything, there's always going to be things. Y'all, 2025 has been a roller coaster. I deal with grief with humor because, how else would you deal with it? So I joke that, 2025 has been, my country song. My dog died. My mom got cancer. You know what I mean? It's just, a steamrolled thing. Yeah. But yeah, we just still have to show up every day and get the things done. And it just gets easier and it gets better. And you have to tell yourself that it's a season. That's what I've been telling people. I'm a sad girl right now, but it's just a season, right? It's not a chronic thing. We're just in a sad season, but we'll just keep going. At my core, I know that my joy comes from the Lord, and that joy is still there, and just sad on top of it,
Yeah. No, I mean, I sent that message. I think, a lot of people, they say, oh, you don't understand what I'm going through, and, nobody understands me, and maybe not everybody does, but there is somebody that's kind of been there, that's gone through it, that's going through it. And I find strength within that because, like you said, you probably were thinking of things that I have messaged you. It just confirms, and for me, things that help me, push forward is that, just because, first off, we're all guaranteed one thing in life. We're only in this body for so long, and so that's always there. But things that kind of bring me peace is we were kind of talking offset about this, about whatever you believe in some sort of faith. I think it's could be very scary to think that your life is like a light switch. It's like you're on and then you're off and there's nothing. It's just darkness. I could see that being very scary for people because, nobody wants any of the people that they love to be in darkness, you know. But if you have some sort of faith or you believe in Jesus and God and there's eternal life, then I find peace in knowing that he didn't have any more quality of life the past 2 years, 3 years, I was like, what is he fighting for? I mean, he fought for, because, I mean, my father was 65. Still young, though, you know, and he's a workaholic, probably 10 times as much as me. I got a sliver of balance. He had zero. But, with him, I just knew that, when you have that purpose and that joy is kind of taken away, then, I could see people kind of going downhill because they're not fighting anymore, But I understood, and I think you have to, work through your emotions and give your time. Everybody, again, deals with it differently. You have to have time for yourself to grieve and all that, but you got to pick yourself up. Life does not stop.
No.
Work doesn't stop. Your bank doesn't stop calling you for the bills. Life still goes on.
And think of where you would be mentally if you did let yourself waller in that for too long, All you're doing is setting yourself back further and further and further. You're making it worse on yourself when you come out of the other side. Instead of continuing to do these little things that you should be doing every single day and getting those tasks done and getting your routine in, then when you come out on the other side, you're not really further behind, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I have to keep telling myself, girl, this is just a season. We still have such big goals to achieve. We can't stop. We can't sit and stop for too long. Take a minute and rest, yes, but we don't stop. We keep going. And I think my mom is so strong in her faith. She has no doubt in her mind where she is going. The Bible tells her that she's going to be made new, right? So this body that has failed her entire, adult life, that goes away. With death comes new life. And so she is looking forward to that in a way. And I understand for people that aren't followers of Christ, that might be crazy to think of, but it has made everybody else, our whole family, has such a sense of peace about that because we truly know where she's going and what's awaiting her. And it's way better than anything that we have here on this earth,
Yeah.
So I think that helps a lot too.
I would say that I'm sure that's helpful because of how young she is. It can be extremely difficult if she's like, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
You know, versus like, okay, like let's work through this and just kind of see what happens. But at the same time, she knows that there's some better life afterwards. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah,
I think that's important because there are people out there that are listening that even I've talked to that are going through different things, and they'll shut down for weeks, months, and like I a lot of times even use my son, my wife to like keep me focused because again, I'm trying to be a leader, a protector. I want them to like see that okay, things happen, but dad's still like he's still going. He's still pushing. What's wrong with him? You know, he doesn't feel. He has no emotions. He's AI. But like I have my feelings.
Such a compliment.
Yeah, like no kidding, but I just process it different and again, I've had my moments, but life goes on. And I think you want to provide a good life for the ones that you love. So you got to show up.
Well, and the support, like you said, your wife and your son. Same for me, my husband and my daughter. Like the people that you surround yourself matter too. Like my husband knows that I have big goals for myself. So like he's gonna be sensitive towards me, but he's not gonna let me sit and waller. You know, he's gonna be like, "Come on, let's get up. We got stuff to do. Like you've got life to live. You got people to love on and take care of, and like we have goals for ourselves. You know, so it's being around people, whether it's friends or family, that are going to push you. And the same people we were going out drinking with,
I know.
15 years ago. So,
yeah. Well, I want to kind of close things up and talk about, you know, if somebody's where you were at that kind of like, I'm trying to get healthier. I want to stop drinking. I want to stop smoking. What are some things you feel like they could start to try to get them some momentum in getting, you know, changing their life into a different direction? Like, were there anything that you did that you felt like was like really good nuggets that really kind of propelled you forward?
I truly think it goes back to surrounding yourself with those people. Like you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So if you can just I always say like, put me in the room. Like if you can just put me in the room with them, you know what I mean? I can schmooze my way, I can fake it till I make it. Just like put me in the room with the really successful people. And so like just get yourself in the room, whether that room is Clean Eats or that room is the gym or whatever that room is for you, where it just is going to, you know, it's going to level you up. Like start there. Just walk in. I promise you, there are people that are dying, me, to love you and take care of you and help you, you know?
Yeah. No, I think 100% for sure. I think that is, especially if you're from like a small town, you know, being from, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast or not, but, you know, working in the restaurant in Bowling Springs is a small town. We'd have, there was a server, she had to be in her late 60s, you know, super nice, Southern lady. But I remember sitting outside with her one day and just kind of talking to her. And she told me she has never left Spartanburg County.
That is wild.
Hasn't ever gone to Greenville, which is, you know, 30 minutes away.
Our daily commute.
Yeah, our daily commute.
You and I are back and forth every day.
But you're talking about 60-something years and never left this radius. And it starts to think, and, you know, again, I'm not judging, but you only know what you know. Mm-hmm. And so when you start to surround yourself with people that have experienced life, gone through, you know, other even dramatic or, you know, high levels of different experiences, I think that will open up your mind to what's actually like possible, what you can get through. So for me, again, like separating myself from certain people, getting in a room, podcast. This is why I started the podcast. You know, when I started into the coaching space, I mean, I knew how to get people in shape and stuff like that, but business is different. Mm-hmm. And so getting on YouTube, you know, watching mentors on there that, you know, there is a guy that I've always wanted to like work under, you know, and like learn from him, teach from him. And when I started in 2020, he was $50,000 for the year. Jeez. I'm like, okay, well, maybe one day, you know? And so a couple years go by, but within this time frame, he's got so much content on YouTube. He's got his own podcast. This is all free, you know, and he's just unloading, telling you everything. And so I just consume. And to this day, I still keep up to him. And I ran into a friend at a conference down in Florida. And my mentor at the time was actually putting this whole event on. And I was like, oh, dude, I was like, are you working with this guy now? And he was like, no, I actually, I signed up with Bedros. Bedros was the guy. I was like, oh, damn. I was like, Bedros? I was like, isn't he what's he charging now? And he was like, 100.
Dang.
100K for the year. And I was like, dang, dude. And he was like, yeah, well, we just did over $1 million this year. So, I know it's a lot, but I'm going to try. I called him 4 months later. 4 months later, doubled his revenue.
Stop.
In 4 month time. I was like, no wonder he charged $100,000.
Yeah.
He done made it all back. I was like, I don't have $100,000 to give you, but you know what I'm
right.
saying? But when I go
in advance,
yeah,
once I make that.
Yeah, but I say that to say, that's one thing to invest in a mentor, but don't stop yourself from consuming like free stuff that's like available to you and just implement.
We are living in a time where, there's never been so many free resources.
Yeah.
And that was a big driver for me was personal development. Like, I didn't even know really what that was, right? Back in the day. And Jim Rohn was the first, personal development, motivational speaker. And his stuff was on cassette, y'all. But you can YouTube him now and just listen. But he says that you have to work harder on yourself than you do at your job. And remember, I told you, I've always been a hard worker, but I wasn't just spinning my wheels, I wasn't getting where I wanted to be. Yeah. And so I had never heard that. And it just, something switched in my head when I heard that. You got to work harder on yourself than you do at your job. And it truly did change my life and where I went. And again, like you said, there's so many people there's so many books, podcasts, YouTube channels that you can get in. So if you can't change the 5 people around you right now, just pick 5 people to start filling your brain with,
Yeah. It will open up doors you've never even experienced. It's funny, I had a client in this morning and we were actually talking about that, just kind of like routines through the day. And he's like, I don't know if you ever noticed, but he's like, when I get off my routine, I feel like things fall apart. I was like, what do you mean by that? And he's like, every day I do my devotional, I journal, I listen to an audiobook or a podcast. And he's like, I don't know, I just have these things that I do. And I noticed this past week that I was just really busy. I had to stay out late a couple of nights to finish jobs and things like that. And he's like, I started finding myself going down this rabbit hole of just not caring and not doing the things that I was supposed to be doing. And I was like, that's funny. Yeah. Cause I was like, kind of like you were saying, every time you're in the car, you're listening to, gospels or certain things. And I'm a person, if I'm in the car, podcast.
Yeah.
I do not, radio, what's that? I don't need that.
I know. I have a few podcasts that I listen to and catch up on, and then just switched over to praise and worship, and then that's what I want in my brain, you know?
Because I'll be driving and I'll be listening to stuff. I'm like, oh, little ideas are just dropped in there. So that has nothing to do with the podcast either, but somehow my brain's cranking. So, I think for you guys, find that avenue, find that way to get creative and, work on yourself. That is, I think, the higher that you can put yourself, the better you can serve everybody else. If you are broken and don't know what you're doing with your life, how could you potentially help anybody? You can't.
That's right.
So,
my one disclaimer on personal development is if you find someone, because there's so many people out there, right, that are experts and gurus on things. And so if you find somebody, do a quick Google search and see what they have built for themselves. And if they have not built anything, perhaps don't take their advice with a grain of salt,
Yeah, perhaps. I like how you word that. Yeah, and also, I would also say make sure your values align.
Yeah.
Make sure your values align. More specifically, since we're talking business, I was looking for certain mentors, and, there's a lot of them. So I do my due diligence. I'm researching and things like that. But there's some people that I couldn't vibe with. Either they were just very foul at the mouth, and no judgment. I just choose to be careful with the way that I talk. Sometimes they'll come out, but I do my best to not just be saying the F-bomb every other sentence. But also the way that you acquire business, and I did. I had a guy that was teaching me sales at one time, and he was like, you pressure these people so hard, and they're either buying or they're cussing you out and hanging up the phone. And I just found that to be so not me and uncomfortable. And I was like, we're here to help people, and I am not about to pressure people into things that they do not want to do. Because I realized the people that, if you force people to do things they don't want to do, they're the worst people to be around. Because they don't want to be there. I want people to let me open the door. And
word of mouth swings both ways. If you have a customer or a client and you wow them, like I love to brag on people. If I have a great experience, I'm telling everybody about the experience that I had. But if I had a negative experience, I'm also telling everybody about the negative experience that I had, you know? So word of mouth is our biggest driver. So if a customer comes in or a client comes in and you've pressured them or made them feel uncomfortable, you have to know that they're going and telling people that, you know?
Yeah.
Don't work with that guy. He's real pushy, you know? Nobody wants that.
No, for sure. Thank God I'm on your good side because I know how you network. So
I do. I truly do love, like that's the biggest way that I find success in networking is just supporting other small businesses the way that I want to be supported. So like if I truly believe in somebody and align with them and I feel like they're doing good work, like I want to push their stuff out to everybody and I want to tell people about them because I want them to be successful, right? Because we're all just doing our best.
Doing our part, trying to stay afloat. No, but you're crushing it. I'm super impressed.
You too.
And I want to thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun.
And so do you want to give them, where can they follow you?
Yeah. So if you're local, Clean Eats is at 3608. We're on Pelham Road in the Earth Fair Shopping Center. Again, we're open 11 to 7, Monday through Friday, and then 12 to 4 on Saturday and Sunday. If you want to follow my personal account, I'm on Instagram at Mother Hugger Jones. And then our Clean Eats account is Clean Eats with a Z, GVL, like the abbreviation for Greenville.
Awesome. I'll put all those in the links below so you guys can check it out. The number one Clean Eats.
The number one Clean Eats. I'll make sure to send this to all the other franchisees. They'll love that.
I love it. So thank you. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And I got a lot of value out of this.
Me too. Thanks. Right. Hope they did too.
Yeah, they do. So, all right. You guys have a good one. See ya.